Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the Produce Buzzers podcast. We are so happy you have joined us today, and I think you will be too after the show is over, because you will learn a lot about fresh fruits and vegetables, how to select and store them, how to prepare and cook them, and surprising facts about their history and origin. We hope it inspires you to eat more fresh fruits and vegetables, not only for your health, but also for your delight and pleasure as you explore their amazing world of taste and delicious flavors. Eating more of them will transform your life in so many positive ways. So settle back, relax, and get ready for another delicious adventure with the Produce Buzzers. Greetings, Produce Buzzers podcast fans. I'm Edwin Stepp, your host and executive editor of ProduceBuzz.com. Produce Buzzers podcast fans, have you ever tried microgreens? If not, you will be fascinated by this week's episode. We have an expert on them who is pioneering growing methods for these tiny little versions of the veggies and greens you know so well in their adult form. Microgreens are vegetable greens, not to be confused with sprouts or shoots, that are harvested just after the first little leaves come onto the plant and have developed a full set of leaves. Microgreens are smaller than baby greens because they are harvested soon after sprouting rather than after the plant has matured to produce multiple leaves. They are used as a visual, flavor, and texture enhancement mostly in foods. Microgreens are used to add sweetness and spiciness to food. They are loaded with nutrients and have been shown to have 5 times as many vitamins and carotenoids as their mature plant counterparts. You can find almost all of your favorite veggies in this form, but some of the most common versions grown are arugula, cilantro, kale, broccoli, sunflower, mustard, radish, red cabbage, amaranth, snow pea, and sorrel. Our guest this week is Eric McClam, who owns City Roots Farm in Columbia, South Carolina. They started there in 2009 as an 8-acre family-owned organic farm located right in the middle of downtown Columbia. It was South Carolina's first urban farm. They grow their microgreens in greenhouses, in soil, and not hydroponic, and they grow these certified organic microgreens year-round. Last year, City Roots began expanding its operation onto a newly acquired 90-acre organic farm on which it constructed a new state-of-the-art carbon-neutral facility that includes a 73,000 square foot greenhouse, 2 acres of solar panels, geothermal heating systems, and a distribution facility. We met up with Eric at the Southeastern Produce Council's Southern Exposure Conference in Tampa, Florida last March. Since we were there on the conference floor, there's a lot of background noise. We apologize for that, but it's not too distracting. So stay tuned to learn about all these delicious and nutritious microgreens. Produce Buzzers podcast fans, we have a special guest with us today. He is a man who's growing some wonderfully nutritious and delicious vegetables, we'll say, that you need to put in your diet. Our guest today is Eric McClam from City Roots Farm in Columbia, South Carolina. And they've been growing microgreens for a few years now, and their operation is expanding. They are growing along with their microgreens. So welcome to the show, Eric. We appreciate you joining us, and glad to have you here. We want to learn all about City Roots. But first, I want to learn about Eric.
Sure.
Well, how did Eric get started into farming?
Well, kind of a non-traditional background, and I'm fortunate to be a farmer. Back in 2009, it was when City Roots began, when we started kind of our farming journey. My dad's first job was in tobacco. He went on to be an architect, general contractor, developer. I went to graduate school and undergraduate in architecture. And in 2008 and 2009, the economy crashed, and no one's hiring architects. And my dad heard about an urban farm up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin called Growing Power. It's an urban farm. He said, well, that's a cool concept. Why don't I do that in Columbia, South Carolina? I'm retiring. Hey, Eric, you need a job. Get off the bar stool in New Orleans. Come back and give me a hand. I said, well, yes, I need a job. Sounds like fun. Let's get dirty and get our hands, in the soil. Right. So we started it together just as a kind of market garden, market farm, doing CSAs, farmers markets.
In the middle of Columbia.
Correct, yeah.
The city, right downtown.
The city itself. So on a 2.5 acre urban farm site, we had to change the zoning regulations for the city to allow farming as an accepted land use.
Interesting.
We brought in a bunch of city compost. We built a office, wash pack facility, kind of barn building, eventually a commercial kitchen, event space, a lot of agritourism. I joke, I've grown about everything from arugula to zucchini to mushrooms to cut flowers.
So it wasn't microgreens to begin with.
And microgreens and aquaponics.
Okay.
So microgreens are always kind of kind of the most stable, functional crops that we always grew. It was always something we knew was probably our cash crop, if you will, that was, really earning the most comparative to the field crops.
Right.
But being in my early mid-20s, I said, well, no, I want to get on a tractor. I want to have fun. I want to be more outdoors. And we always did microgreens in the greenhouse, and that kind of always picked up. We were always kind of known for having microgreens in the market to direct to restaurants and to retailers. And my dad kind of joked a couple of years ago, he said, Eric, we really should stop farming in the field. You've expanded to 15 acres of mixed veg, but the microgreens really are making money. Vegetables aren't. And finally, in my early 30s, we kind of had the epiphany, like, all right, we need to pivot. We need to build more greenhouses. We need to grow more microgreens. And we slowly started to pull out the mushrooms out of our production, the mixed veg out of production. And really in about 2019, right at 2020, we just stopped and just did microgreens. At that point, we had about 25, 30,000 square feet of greenhouse. And we kind of plateaued at that point. And we said, all right, well, let's start looking around. This is 2021, 2022, after the kind of initial peak and valley of COVID on sales and production. So well, let's find a new site, a new facility, and start expanding and really marketing ourselves as a microgreen grower and producer. And so we purchased a 90-acre farm site and started building a 75,000 square foot greenhouse, a new washing and packaging facility, several ancillary buildings for our kind of production facilities. Yeah. And what was really fun with that process was, being an architect, my dad being an architect as well, we really got to express the kind of design elements of how do we want this to function, how do we want it to be sustainable, not just in the buzzword, like make it sustainable. How do we are more efficient energy-wise? Are we more efficient production? How are we more efficient in the manufacturing of produce, and how do we do our material handling better? How do we do our logistics better? So over about a 2-year period, we've been designing and building out the new facility, and we moved in a little bit less than a month ago. So what's been interesting about that facility is that we have designed it and are now, once we plug in our solar panels in about a month, we've got about 1,000 of them, about 2.5 acres of them, is it will be energy neutral. We should actually be producing more energy than we're consuming.
Wow.
On the farm, even with LED lighting, even with our heating. And we worked with a local engineer that he's a retired nuclear mechanical and electrical engineer that's a little bit smarter than me as a farmer. And,
so you don't have a nuclear reactor?
I don't. But we do have a really neat geothermal heating and cooling system. So we've installed a heat pump system, which we can run hot or cold water through our concrete slab. So we've got 8 miles of PEX tubing through the slab with control zones every 24 feet. So we can set it at 65, 70, 75 degrees. And we put our grow trays directly on those. And that allows for a thermal transfer of heat or of cold. So much more efficient than running natural gas or propane. So our site has no natural gas, or we're not burning any petrochemicals for heating and cooling. We're running it through a geothermal heat pump, where it's not a heating element, it's a phase change of a gas in a heat plate. So we can run it hot in the winter, run it through these large 5,000 gallon tanks. We'll pull that delta T of temperature out of the slab, exchange that in a pond, and run it back in a closed loop. Or the reciprocal of that in the summertime, we can put cold out, remove the heat from the slab, and dump it in the pond and run it back. And
so you can grow year round with
year round.
Right?
So we're 7 days a week. Our yield used to drop in the summertime. We're in Columbia, South Carolina. It's really hot and humid. So
the whole thing is in the concrete. No fan coils or
correct. So no large evaporative coolers, no large exhaust fans like your poultry fans, exhaust fans that you see. So it's a Cravo greenhouse, it's a Canadian greenhouse that has a retractable roof and sidewall system.
Is that a brand name?
It's a brand. Cravo is a manufacturer in Canada that builds these all over the world and every continent but Antarctica. And what they're known for is having a greenhouse that's operable. The roof opens and closes, much like a shower curtain, to shade cloth and sidewalls. So what that allows for is your heat and humidity can go up and escape. You get cross ventilation from breezes and wind, and what that does is reduce the amount of energy, but also you get full spectrum natural light. So you're getting more chlorophyll, more bright colors, more photosynthesis, a healthier plant. Even that airflow strengthens the microgreen leaf and the stalk. So you get a thicker, waxier coating, more resilient to disease, pests, other issues. And you're also getting a little bit more yield because it's just a slightly heavier, denser product.
It's a healthier.
It's a healthier product. So consequently, you extrapolate that to the consumer that's eating that. And to kind of probably should circle back to what a microgreen is, is that it is.
Well, before you get to that, I want to just back up a bit because you said you're opening this up.
Yep.
Breezes, they open up the skies. That means you're susceptible to pests and other things. But as I understand it, you're organic, right? So
That is
how do you
correct.
control that?
That is a good question. So we have all the food safety certifications. We have USDA organic. So we have organic throughout, so we can't have any intrusion of exterior animals. Same with all of our doors and openings.
Right.
And as far as pests, we are essentially the same as a field lettuce, field green. It's a single cut. But that being said, microgreens are 7 to 10 days to turnaround from seeding to germination.
Really? What?
So
7 to 10?
7 to 10 days. And with the new greenhouse, with our LED lighting, we're trying to get that cycle down to 7 days for all of our varieties.
Yeah.
Now that we're just moving in, we haven't quite hit that metrics, that goal yet. But in that cycle, you don't have a pest buildup.
Okay.
You still can have, soil-borne diseases. You can still have foliar issues if you have high humidity or, dripping from the greenhouse ceiling or issues that you see in most greenhouse production. We still have those variables that we have to contend with. We try and mitigate those risks by proper irrigation, proper watering, misted boom irrigation. But we're not putting any extra sides on your microgreens. There's no fertilizer that we're adding. There are no pesticides, no herbicides, no fungicides, and no fertilizers that we're doing. We've got very, very healthy, vibrant soil that we use that we grow microgreens in. And because we have a wide array of microgreens, we've got kale, mustard, purple cabbage, radish, beet, broccoli, cilantro, sunflower, snow pea. We've got a mix of an amaranth. So we've got grains, brassicas, cereals. You have all these varieties of microgreens from a crop mix. You have different elements of what that does in your soil biology and soil type that keeps it healthy. So once we're done harvesting those microgreens, it's a single cut, top cut. You're taking those leafy greens for washing, packing them. But we're taking that soil, that root mass and all that, and composting that back down, letting that break back down in a static covered pile, and then reusing that. So that soil is doing its natural.
Is that somewhat like integrated pest management? I know you're not introducing pests, but
it is in the sense that we are putting our soil under a microscope. We've got a soil scientist that we retain to look at that. What is our soil health? We're doing soil sampling to look at what our fertility is, what the biology is, and understanding what is going on our farm. And for us, we don't want to reach into the farmer toolbox, if you will, and say, okay, what big hammer, fertilizer, or insecticide can we throw at it? How can we look at it from a design perspective? How can we be better stewards and managers of our process?
Right.
To get a better yield,
Would this be more along the lines of regenerative farming as opposed to because you're composting it back, and so you're not giving it a rest, but you are giving it a rest.
We are, and we are certified organic by the USDA, but also Real Organic certified, which is a certification for more regenerative farms. That their requirements aren't A, they're USDA organic, but B, they are strictly grown in soil. A lot of them are livestock integrated as well. For us, food safety wise, we cannot do that. But for us, that comes back to soil, regenerative soil practices, composting, those inputs that, we're not just going and buying Hoyer or peat moss or something like that, but you're having to buy it and put over and over and over again. And for us, that helps, drive down our cost of production, because at the end of the day, currently microgreens are a higher cost product because inherently a lot of seed, a lot of touch points, a lot of inputs. We're trying with a new facility. We've only been in there for a month, so we are trying to push our cost down and hopefully subsequently our price down to open that to more customers. So we're not just in Whole Foods, not just in Sprouts, not just at Baldor, New York, or we're in white tablecloth. That it's something that, microgreens are 3 to 4 times more nutrient dense than their full leafy green counterparts. And so when it comes down to personal health and well-being, it can't just be those that can, it should be those that could say, hey, this is on the aisle with our lettuce or spinach. It's at the same price point as those other lettuces. And microgreens are typically merchandised right now a lot of times with mushrooms and herbs. We're trying to pull us over to leafy greens, spinach, lettuce. Our packaging is being redone.
More bang for the bite.
Exactly. Thank you. We got some good branding here, so put that out. Then we'll let you trademark that, and then we'll
Thank you.
So, looking at our product, like how can we do better with a facility? How can we do better as a farmer and as a grower? Because I come as a greenhouse grower currently, but prior to that, most of my orientation was to field farming, to looking at what are we doing in the field to do things better? How's our crop rotation? What is our fertility mix? What are we doing all of this? And I came at it, first as a ignorant farmer that did not know what they were doing at all. I came out of college with several degrees in architecture. I, rode a 4-wheeler, went hunting, and played redneck games in my grandfather's tobacco farm. I don't know what they're doing. Like, I'd get stuck in my truck and have to call my uncle to pull me out in the tractor. I didn't realize, they had corn planted there. Oh, sorry. Like, I did not know what it meant. And fortunately, I'm curious. I want to know more. And I, dug deeper, pun intended, to learn from other farmers, mentors, went to, organic trade shows and farming conferences and learned from people, read a ton and said, okay, I didn't have the blinders. Well, this is what daddy did. This is what granddaddy did. I didn't have that bias of this is how you grow. So I did a ton of dumb stuff. I mean, I've made a lot of mistakes, but we pivoted and we pivoted and we pivoted and finally we focused and, hopefully we all learn from our mistakes and I've made a lot. Fortunately after 15 years, we're saying, okay, can we focus on what we're doing and can we do it well? And now the goals, how do we find more retailers? How do we get it to more customers? Whether that's food service, whether that's retail. And, that's why we're here at SAPC. How do we connect? This is a new world for me. This is our 3rd year attending. First 2 years we did it with, South Carolina Department of Agriculture through one of their programs. Because, my eyes were very wide when I looked at what other brands are here. I'm like, we do not do this amount of sales as all these other people. And we're now catching our stride that we are able to kind of play in the sandbox. We're at the table finally. And now we've got the capacity with a new facility that's, 10x the size of our previous.
Yeah.
So
that's an inspiring story.
So thank you.
But then we can listen to and learn from your mistakes.
It's not like it took you 60 years. I mean, how many years?
Yeah, exactly. Kept on making the same mistake twice.
Yeah.
Eric, what year did you graduate high school?
2004.
Okay.
I'm 38. 2 kids.
Okay, thank you.
Boy and girl. So, I'm fortunate to have a wonderful wife and family. And I co-own the farm with my dad. And he's semi-retired. I kind of half joking, half serious. He spends about 3/4 of the year in Mexico, surfing, playing pickleball, drinking beer, and hanging out. My parents moved down there after they retired, and so he comes back and forth. But he's helped build the greenhouse the last year and a half. So very involved on the kind of mentorship side, on the kind of how do we look at the funding and the capital, the growth, and he picks up the phone when I call. But operationally, I run the daily operations. I've got a phenomenal team back on the farm. I can sit here and be comfortable that things are getting done. I finally, after 15 years, I'm working on the farm, not anymore last year or two. So, next steps for us are to find somebody that can help build our business development and sales team and reach out and, how do we kind of build and grow the business. But yeah, it's been fun. We are, we're a family farm, self-capitalized. We don't have a private equity group or a venture capital group that's, throwing money at us, which I don't think I'd say yes anyway. It's nice to if we want to grow, we want to push the gas pedal or hit the brake.
There's always ties.
There's, we're not tethered. It's an arm wrestle between my dad and I, and I'm the gas pedal, he's the brake. But you know what? He's a little older and wiser. I think he's learned a few things too. So
the older you get, the smarter he gets. That's what I heard.
So I think so. Yeah. And,
so what is the breakdown of your sales? How much are in white tablecloth? How much are retail?
So I'd say probably pre-COVID, we were probably 60% food service, 40% retail. That's probably flipped now. To be candid, food service is more profitable for us. We probably want to grow that quicker, but retail is more consistent and kind of larger. So honestly,
the chefs, they're the best, right? They don't look at the price. They're like, get them for me. Yeah.
Yeah. And, at this point, we used to, I joke, I've been to more restaurants to the back door kitchen delivering than I've been to the front door. But now at this point, we saw a lot to food service distributors, a lot to wholesalers. So we have less of the chef connection, except for in Colombia. They still come to the farm, and that's an old habit to break when they're your friends.
Yeah.
So, and then the retailers, we're delivering directly to them, or they're picking up at us, or we're cross stocking. It kind of depends on the retailer. So,
take me through. Excuse me, sorry. Take me through the you're harvesting it right this second.
Sure.
Tell me then what goes on until it is in the grocery store. Give me that timeline.
Let me start. I guess seed to table, full process.
Okay.
Cynthia, if you don't mind, let me add something to this because I interrupted you when you said
Yes. What is a microgreen?
Start with that and then lead into her question.
So microgreens, I'm not delineating microgreens and sprouts first. So sprouts are typically, almost always grown water based. They have the root system and then leafy green and stalk connected. So it's root, stalk, and stem and leaf. Microgreens are the first growth out of the seed, typically when it's the cotyledon leaf. So the first growth out of the seed, when it gets its first true leaf or start of a true leaf, maybe one or two true leaves, then you get to a petite leaf and a baby green, and then full leaf. So we're at that first stage where it's the cotyledon, very small, right when it's kind of at its tiniest stage, and a lot of that fertility is coming out of that seed, and just a little bit of fertility from the soil. And it is cut. There's no root system; it's just the leafy green. So
it's a bit of the stem,
and leaf. So at that point, on the food safety side, and make the analogy, it is the same cut as a single cut lettuce or baby leaf green.
Okay,
and that's. A lot of times you throw it in a high risk category with sprouts. Although they're different. I mean,
why do sprouts get such a bad rap? Because they're in the water with the root system?
I won't say sprouts in general, but I'll just put it this way. Water is a very much faster vector for pathogens than most other things. It's just inherently that way. I have plenty of sprout growing friends, but that's just a food safety. Anybody that washes
more susceptible.
I understand. Right.
Water is a pathogen vector. So I'll leave it at that without saying anything. For us with microgreens, but because microgreens are a very young cotyledon leaf, they are not as thick or waxy or you don't. It's like spinach. I mean, that's a hardy leaf, or kale. That's a very strong hardy leaf. Microgreens are delicate. So.
Can you have a spinach microgreen?
You could, yeah. Not typically done. It's just a little bit more time on germination and cut, and it's just not one that's done particularly often. It most certainly can. I mean, you can do. We do about a dozen varieties, but there's other of our competitors that probably have 50, 60 varieties. We've kind of stuck to the Pareto principle of the 80-20 effect of, we have a kind of this is what works well for us. And we were adding varieties, as we grow the facility. And we were limited on our time and space at the other facility. We couldn't do all the varieties we wanted to. We're slowly adding variety by variety. But to answer the question about processes, we first start by everything starts with the soil for us. So having healthy organic soil. So we are taking a front end loader, essentially scooping that soil, adding that to a large hopper that feeds into a tray filler. That tray filler gets, the soil gets filled into that tray. The tray goes down a conveyor, goes through a water tunnel. In this case, you could add fertility in that, but in our case, we're just hydrating that water, that soil. Then we're going through a seed line. We're top coating those trays with seeds. So whether it's kale or broccoli or beet or
They don't have to be very, very deep.
They don't. Some of them we have a kind of a roller tamper that, like beet and sunflower and stuff. We kind of tamp that into the soil a little bit with that.
Yeah.
And then it's got a top coater that we put vermiculite on as a top coat. We could add other things, like peat moss if we wanted to, but we add a thin layer of vermiculite.
What is that? Just quickly.
Vermiculite.
That's not a pesticide.
No, sorry.
That's not like a
Absolutely.
pesticide.
So there's like potting soil, you see peat moss, which is just peat and ground down. There's perlite and vermiculite. It's kind of
little white balls or something.
that's perlite was puffed expanded
Well,
glass.
the bottom
Uh-huh.
line is
And
it's a
vermiculite.
natural
It's-
thing.
it's-
It's not a
Yeah, so
not a
it's kind of
synthetic.
mineral. It's kind of like a mineral. It's like very fine sand and very soft and fluffy. So
Yeah.
it helps with cation exchange and adds porosity or soil, adds more space to your soil and helps retain water and you add
Aerates it.
aerates. Yeah, you have more pore space for air and water to enter into your soil, and then you get an electron in your cation exchange. But mainly it's for retaining moisture.
Yeah.
And having something on top of that seed to retain some moisture. So those are in these trays that are 12 inches by 24 inches. They're stackable. They're nesting. We take those and we stack them. We palletize them in a macro bin. So a macro bin is one of those big reusable pallet size, 48 inch by 48 inch bins that you have potatoes or stone fruit in. We take that with a forklift, take that to our germination building. We stack those in there. We keep that in our germination building at 70, 75 degrees. Kind of like people, they like it at a comfortable 70 something
That's
degrees.
too warm for me.
Yeah.
Then, yeah.
But yeah, around 70-ish. And then after a couple of days, about 2 to 3, depending on the variety, 4 for launch. So 2 to 4 days, it's begun to germinate. So it's popped out of that seed. We take it out in the greenhouse with either a forklift or we just purchased some pretty neat AI robotic carts, trailers that we're going to be running. They've got, think about a Roomba on steroids. It's got LiDAR and photo cell eyes. We can set routes with GPS, run it out into the greenhouse and back with harvest and pulling pallets out. But anyway, essentially you pull the pallet out into the greenhouse. We've got a device mechanism that takes 4 trays at a time and places them directly onto the slab, which is heated or cooled through a geothermal system. So that tray then lays on the concrete slab where it's heated and cooled, and then we irrigate with a boom irrigation, which think of a big tractor boom. In greenhouse, it's the same function. There's a little computer controller there. You can set it to go 10 feet, 100 feet, 200 feet, whatever that is, or walk, follow me, and let it go at different speeds. So you water all that in again, and then once it's grown, you're watering it. So
This is pretty high tech.
depending, I'll keep going if you need. So you can set that to whatever duration you need or how many times a day. And you can set that on soil monitoring as well. We've only been in the greenhouse for months. We've got to eyeball it now, but we can't set it for soil moisture reader and automate that.
Yeah.
And then once it's growing, depending on the day length, time of year, how cloudy it is, we got PAR light sensors and LED lighting. We're automating that. So it's okay. Well, we really needed to be running. We need 12 or 18 hours of light. Well, it's wintertime. We're going to turn on the lights. It's summertime. We don't need them. We want to keep 7 days so we can cycle without taking up twice the space in the greenhouse. Turn the LED lighting on and help that. But because the greenhouse has a retractable roof system, even better than what our old greenhouses were, you don't have the blockage of light. So you have a full spectrum light. You're getting more light than you do in a typical greenhouse, but also we've got shade cloths that all that is on a weather station. So that senses barometric pressure, wind speed, humidity, temperature, and has a black plate sensor, which think of something the size of your cell phone that's black, that you get radiant heat gain. So think about summertime if you're standing in the direct sun. You all live in North Carolina or South Carolina, Florida, or in the shade. Ambient temperature is the same, but stand in the sun, tell me how you feel, and stand in the shade, very different. So you get radiant heat gain on your leaf. So it has an algorithm that says, okay, we've got this amount of heat gain. It may be 50 degrees outside, but we have this much sun. We're opening the roof to allow for some cooling, or we're going to retract or close the shade coil because it's getting too hot or too cold. So automating all of that, cutting down on our electrical input and cost. And for us, that's also important. So we're looking at how many kilowatt hours are we utilizing in power. I've now become really good friends with our electrical engineer because we get to nerd out on all this stuff all the time. And so we've designed enough solar, about 400 kW of solar, to offset our entire energy consumption. The geothermal side of it, is 80%, should be about 80% more efficient than a natural gas boiler of its same size. But that doesn't even take into account if we're using unit heaters that are just mounted up in the greenhouse like most are. So we're a lot more efficient. We're offsetting it. So we should be at minimum energy neutral, if not producing more energy than we're consuming. So we've got to get those metrics done. So I can't stand by that because we don't have the empirical, quantitative stuff yet. But we're a month in. It's looking that way. Ask me again in a year. But
I met you about a year ago, and I was fascinated then by what you were doing. And then we spent some time at a produce show in New York City.
We did. Yeah.
It was a lot of fun, and I learned a little bit more. But I'm blown away today. I had no idea. You're like a scientist in all realms: chemistry, biology, technology.
Can I tell you
artificial intelligence? What else?
Can I tell you a funny story about when I was coming down here? And if my wife finds out on this podcast, I'm going to get beat up when I get home. But we have excess energy from solar. So in my mind, I was saying, well, we need to with excess energy or excess solar power. We get our power utility hub gives you almost nothing for your excess power. What do we do with that? In my mind, I said, well, Bitcoin. WH power is what basically equates to Bitcoin.
Controversy about Bitcoin.
There is. We won't go into that rabbit hole. Right. But I started talking to my engineer and my electrician about that. I said, well, hey, small world, we design and build a Bitcoin mine for a woman in a modular setting in a shipping container about 10 minutes from here. And she actually went bankrupt. She did it right before the crypto winter when FTX exploded. But that auction's March 7th. Like, you should look into this. I said, okay, sure. And I looked into it, and I contacted the woman and did all the math. I said, this looks profitable. We could do something with this. And called a buddy of mine in California. I've known since I was 6 years old, my best friends. I said, hey, Matt, let's do this together. We'll talk to this Bitcoin woman. She'll program the software. Let's work something out. So we kind of said, all right, well, it's an online auction, and those are dangerous. And we're doing that. And I was on I-95. I pulled over to do it. I'm on my iPhone bidding on this thing. And then my buddy said, well, our ceiling is this. I'm sorry, we finally hit the ceiling. Like, all right, we're done. Like, I said, I'm getting back in the car. I'm driving. Like, we didn't get it. Like, whatever. And I got down here, and I checked my email. I won the auction. And I even called him. I was like, oh, yeah, I didn't get that Bitcoin thing. So, oh, that's great. I'm glad you didn't. I didn't really want you to do that anyway. So now when I get home, I got to figure out what to do with a Bitcoin mine. But what do you do with your excess power? And I was like, Bitcoin's looking good right now. And what are your excess power? And but the neat part about that is that those computing systems generate heat. I can put that heat loop into my greenhouse through the geothermal and heat the greenhouse through the Bitcoin mining, and I can dump the heat in the summertime. We'll recool the units through the geothermal thing. So again, back to the architecture thing. It's a fun thing.
Wait, what's the tax ramification of all that transfer of energy and heat? And
I've got to give it my CPA. I'm sorry. You find the appropriate, and what I've learned, you find the appropriate people that are smarter than you.
Yeah.
Like who I'm sitting with. You find the people that, you ask the questions and you learn from people, and you say, okay, well, how do you figure this out? Sometimes you kind of have to jump both feet in and figure it out later, but So how do you loop all that in, and what are those synergies? What can you do? There's an opportunity in most all things you do, and how do you design something? I'm a serial entrepreneur and farmer and love designing stuff. And how do you make things better? And it's I don't know.
Can you add a bakery and use that electricity?
I make some great sourdough. We'll leave it at that. So
when you said you came from architecture, and I was thinking about all the schooling that goes into becoming an architect, and I thought architect to microgreen farming. And now that I listen to what you've done here, I understand there was a connection because you can use all those skills in this.
you can.
Problem solving more than it is.
It is. That's what people always think. Architecture. While I have a strong understanding of structural building, the majority of school for architecture is about how you learn to problem solve and design to figure out the needs of a client or of a project within the parameters you have set forth. So how do you look at that from a cost basis? How do you look at it from an environmental basis? How do you look at it on a design basis? Whether that's aesthetic or, form following the function of what you're designing. How do you look at that? And how do you solve the problem? And how do you stay interested? And for me, I've stayed interested in farming because, as my dad often says, farming is the hardest job he's ever had. He's run a 600-person, director of general services for the state of South Carolina with several $100 million budgets. And farming is way harder. It's the original form of gambling. Mother Nature's house usually wins. It is extremely difficult. It is extremely complex. There are, not only are we working against, a ticking time bomb of a product that expires, but how do you deal with weather? How do you deal with inflation? How do you deal with capital resources? It is a very, very dynamic element. And, we're not creating guns or butter here on that strictly economic standpoint.
Right.
It's not widgets to say crank up the machine, please.
Yeah, right.
It's, fortunately for us, we're a 7 to 10 day cycle, but my friends that are potato and carrot farmers, you get a couple shots a year, and, selling to a retailer, you get a couple shots a year. So, we're a little bit fortunate that
more at the mercy of much more of Mother Nature.
Correct.
You've kind of tamed Mother Nature through all this technology. Not completely
to the extent we
understand,
can, yeah.
but that's brilliant.
Yeah. And, and if I can talk about, I guess, another CEA, controlled environment agriculture, is kind of one of the hot topics now. And, depending on one's perspective of whether that is good or bad, CEA is a lot of times synonymous with either greenhouse or indoor and vertical.
Right.
And for us, I come from the perspective of farming has been done and growing of any plant for billions of years. Farming's been done for several millennia. Growing in soil is the way that's always kind of been done. For me, it's a logical step to say, okay, why alter what Mother Nature's done for billions of years? Let's keep to that within those constraints. And then how do we adapt the built environment to optimize?
Keep it close to original.
It's close to it.
Because some of this vertical farming, I mean, it's it's in hydroponics, it's indoor, it's non-natural.
Well, I say might be kind of controversial in that sense, but to me, logically speaking, and I have vertical friends, and is that for them, it's
some
indoor.
of my best friends are vertical.
Yeah, and so, yeah. So, but to think of it from an energy perspective, you have all the LED lighting, all the lighting. You have all the HVAC heating and cooling. You've got all the pumps. You have all the fertilizers, all the inputs, all the growing media, and you have to burn natural gas or propane for CO2. You have a lot of input costs. You have a lot of energy costs. And while they are probably more, or they use less water than we might, which we use very, very little because we are doing misty irrigating stuff, is that, take the conversation for me, environmental impact of energy is not taking into consideration. That's why we have so much solar. You need to offset your energy consumption. That's why the cost premium is there for indoor and vertical. For me, the cost of energy needs to be part of the conversation.
That's an interesting
And
perspective.
that is a perspective that, that is my personal one, but I think energy needs to be taken into account. And how can you have that in the equation of sustainability or environmentalism. Energy is part of it.
Right. So when you're managing the soils,
Mhm.
how do you manage something like listeria that's natural in soil? Do you ever have problems with that type of thing?
So what it comes back to is kind of a balance of that soil food web. So you're looking at nematodes, you're looking at soil bacteria, soil fungi, whether it's a pathogen like rhizoctonia, or it's dampening off, or it's pythium. So there's a balance of too much moisture sometimes, or there's too much nitrogen, or there's too much of one thing or another, or too much salinity because it's very hot and you've over irrigated. Even on the small scale of container growing, essentially is what we're doing in those plant trays. We're still utilizing soil. Is how do you look at that? Then you go to, okay, well, when we are washing and packing on the food safety side, we're doing listeria testing on all hard surfaces. You're doing listeria testing on the leafy greens. You have all those control points you're looking at, and then we're looking at how do we better our food safety. Then we're looking into different wash pack lines that we will put in our new facility here in the next 6 months. That we're looking at one that uses O3 ozone, so 3 oxygen molecules plus UV light plus hydrogen peroxide, and running our grains through that to extend their shelf life. We've just switched over to a lidding film, top seal, reseal. So with laser perforated packaging. So how do we release the appropriate amount of oxygen or CO2 out of our packaging to extend our shelf life? Because at the end of the day, our customer needs shelf life, our buyer needs the shelf life, and we want our product to be beautiful and stand out on the shelf and last for a long period of time. So, it's all iterative. How do you become slightly better every time you look at the system?
But you clip those greens separate from the roots, so
Right.
it doesn't really come in contact with the actual soil, the leaves,
so
right?
that's true. So it's not like you're digging a potato or a carrot.
Mm-hmm.
So you have one less contact point that you have to be wary of.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
When you compost that soil down, do you have to add nitrogen to it?
We do not. So because we're growing some peas, which are a legume, there's a little bit of nitrogen fixation there. The soil that we buy in from a sort of organic composter, there's a fair amount of inherent nitrogen within what we are utilizing, and then it's set at a kind of a, once we bought and brought in that soil that's prior to arriving to us very fertile, we're keeping that fertility up through what we are growing and through the composting of our soil. And to be technical, we are not composting because we're not adding manure and we're not getting it up to 160 degrees. So it's just a static pile in which it is breaking down. So when it comes to NOP organic standards,
But
we
when
are
you
composting.
when you
But-
static, doesn't that heat up?
It does heat up, and our piles are still getting to the 130, 140, 150, 160, but we are not adding other inputs or manures or nitrogen sources. So therefore, we're not required by organic certification to have to worry about what we call the manure rule, which is
Right.
120 day.
Okay.
So
Okay. So once you cut it,
Mhm.
and then you wash it.
we are hydrocooling it.
Okay. So you hydrocool first.
Hydrocool it, and so we're utilizing a sanitizer, Sanidate in there, and then a clear water bath after that. And then we're air drying it. We're pressuring it to a centrifuge, getting the water off of it,
Right.
drying it, and then bringing that into our cold storage to cool it further. Once it's back down to the 34 temp that it's at in the cooler, we take it back out and then we run it through currently we're doing a lot of hand packing and clamshells, but as I am sitting here, we just finished with our new lidding film group and Pro Seal that's got some top seal equipment. We just got online this week.
So that's becoming automated. The packaging
Packing is becoming automated. We're still waiting for our lidding film. We've got our trial film and we're waiting for the lidding film to show up in about 3 weeks.
So how far out are we now? Are we 24 hours? Are we 2 days? What?
We're still within a couple hours.
Couple hours of harvest?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So
we're
it gets,
packaging it that day of harvest. And then it's getting boxed for the end buyer. Put back into our cold storage, palletized for whoever that might be, and then typically next day pickup. I mean, sometimes it's a
and
day or
what's
two.
their shelf life?
Upon
Worst case scenario.
14 days.
Oh, wow. That's a long time.
So
Nicely done.
that arrives to their warehouse with a 14-day. So that caveat of how long once it leaves me.
And assuming that the
Yeah.
supply chain, cold chain isn't broken.
Correct. Yes. So obviously we're gunning all the trucks and picking up all our trucks and all that.
Yeah.
But once it gets to that distributor
It's out of your
or buyer, it's out of that chain of custody is out of my hands. And if it sits in somebody's warehouse, they know it's a 14-day upon arrival. You're hoping it gets to them, whoever that is, within a day or two. But our truck, I mean, if we're going to New York or going to South Florida, that's 1 to 2 day transit. So that's, once it's at our pack date, leaving facility, it's 14 days. So you're ticking days down as it's transported, as it sits in warehouse. So typically when it's on your retailer shelf, it's 10 days to 14, depending on variety. But, upon departure of us, it's 14.
So you're coming down to Sprouts down here? Down in Florida? I'm in Florida.
We will be in April, most likely.
Are you doing any kind of shipping to Florida at all?
Right now, no, but we are waiting for our wedding film, which our arrival date of that is end of March. So we should start delivering to Florida and South Florida in April.
And with whom are you going to deliver?
We'll be delivering with Sprouts.
Oh, you will? Okay, good. Because I have a Sprouts local and I'd be really, it's hard to find good micro Sprouts.
So that's not finalized, but that's what we're in conversation with. That's what we're looking to route wise. So
You had a question.
I'm trying to visualize this greenhouse. Is everything on the floor, on the concrete?
it is.
So how high is your ceiling for that?
It's only 2 feet.
Yeah, and on that one,
They have to
we
crawl through.
we actually bought our greenhouse used. I'm that guy that bought the $250,000 greenhouse on the Craigslist.
Teresa had some
and wired a
greenhouses.
guy in New Jersey for a greenhouse and
Oh,
hope
my-
it showed up.
Yeah.
But it's actually
eBay.
Craigslist.
Oh, Craigslist.
Craigslist.
Oh my God.
Even sketchier. So about a dozen tractor trailers, and we rebuilt the greenhouse. Talk about a Rector set from hell, not having drawings initially, and 12 tractor trailer loads of parts. So it's actually, I think it's either 16 or 18 foot ceiling. Actually, or 18 foot ceiling. Typically, it's 12 to 14 for most of these that are manufactured. It was previously a tree nursery greenhouse.
Uh-oh.
But you can't go lower than that.
No,
You
we
have to
could
have that airspace.
No, you don't. I mean, when we buy and build the next greenhouse, it'll be.
12 feet.
But this was just what we bought
Right.
off Craigslist.
So you could put
Okay.
your own roof on that because you said it's retractable.
Yes, we bought a new roof, reskinned it, remotorized it.
It was
new
just
drive
the
systems.
frame.
So it was the frame. So we basically bought a bunch of galvanized steel and a ton of parts.
Yeah.
That was. We thought it'd take 6 months. It took a year and a half.
What should consumers know about microgreens?
So consumers should know that they are a very healthy leafy green that they can utilize in salads, sandwiches, smoothies. You're not going to build a full salad out of it. It is an element to add flavor, texture, and aesthetic. So microgreens predominantly decade plus ago were really a white tablecloth chef item that they're picking up with tweezers and putting their
Garnish.
either the garnish. They were replacing parsley, that little that everybody hated on their steak and potatoes. So, but it adds an element of color to a white fish or something that's bland in color or bland in texture. You can add something that's really beautiful. It gives a great accent or gives a great unique flavor that's also healthy for you. And then then that's this kind of element of the plating side of it. If you're having a dinner party kind of thing, you want to surprise some people. But then also on the salad side, like if you added a mustard microgreen, it's really like a wasabi. It's very peppery. It's really you can put that on a sandwich in lieu of a great of a mustard. Arugula microgreens is really, great flavor. Sunflower, real kind of crunchy, nutty, high protein. Your peas are, a great, leafy green that don't last a long time. Also, those are more of a shoot than a microgreen, but
So actual sunflowers you can
yeah.
sprout.
So we grow those, and they're a real kind of thick, waxy stalk and too thick, kind of leaves. If it grows too long, it gets a true leaf. It's very bitter and it's got kind of a hairy, furry leaf, and you don't want to go to a true leaf. But that's the sunflower shoots are a real high protein source. And then in smoothies, I'm fortunate I can bring home a pound bag of it, throw in a smoothie for my kids and wife every day. But you can also have access to it.
No, it was
More nutritious than iceberg,
They are,
but still can replace iceberg.
correct.
poor
Yeah.
Rick in the iceberg.
Yeah, it does
They don't
last
pay me
forever.
anymore.
Yeah, it does last forever.
He used to do marketing for the iceberg.
Yeah, and he's just like it's a vessel. It's a
It's
vessel
I
for
just-
peanut butter to go on.
Yeah. So
We always said that everybody said it has no nutritional value. But we would say it's a vehicle for other nutritious to make it more palatable. And that's why people put iceberg lettuce in their salads.
Yeah.
It's like a delivery system.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah.
you don't eat popcorn, the flavor of the popcorn. You eat
butter and
put
salt.
butter and salt on there.
Yeah, yes, I like that. Yeah, yeah. With
No.
ranch only, right? Yeah.
I think that you would let me harvest your display on
That's
like the last day or something. And like those snow peas, those were so perfect to just throw in pasta.
They are. They hold up
And they-
much better in a pasta than a lot of the microgreens will wilt very rapidly because they're so delicate. But your sunflower and your pea shoots will hold up in a pasta.
They were
And,
really good.
And it is, from the customer, grocery shopper side of stuff is that, in my house, I actually do predominantly a good bit of the cooking and grocery shopping and going to farmers market. From being a field vegetable farmer, the question always was, what do you do with this? You always have to have the answer of how do you cook this? Or what do I do with, radicchio or an endive, and which I still don't know what to do with those. It's just too bitter. But, what do you do with kohlrabi? But with microgreens, they are a leafy green that you would treat in the same scenarios as a salad or a sandwich.
And the most of those,
That's really
the most of the microgreens have the same flavor as the adult version.
Yeah, pretty
Yeah.
much. And but are really kind of concentrated like the mustard and like a cilantro. And the cilantro is a fun one because it's, some people love or hate cilantro, depends on if you're there, it's soap or or if you really like it. But with that one, because it's an herb and it's stalky and it's natural full growth size, the microgreen does not have that, fibrous stalk. You can throw that right into a little, into a taco,
Guacamole,
a guacamole, and not have that fibrous
right.
kind of like, what's stuck in my teeth or what am I grinding up here?
Yeah.
And so that's where, your chefs get to have a little bit more fun and they can think
Mhm.
about the palate and think about, how much flavor it can add to something.
Right.
Would that have more flavor than the regular cilantro?
It typically does.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's just like you can't even believe the
Down.
punch that it had.
Yeah.
Wow.
I love arugula, so I've got to try the arugula.
Well, you know where to find me, booth
All
115.
right. Yes, sir.
Exactly. Put it with some beets, it'd be perfect.
Yeah.
Do you do mail order?
We don't. We don't.
Oh, come on.
Although I come up to woods up to
That's
perform
true.
very
That's
often.
true.
So
He just
I'll have to bring you up to Hendersonville.
Wait a minute, you come Hendersonville, come on. Like I was the one who found you. I found you a
You're in
year and a
South
half ago.
Florida. If you let me know that you need me to bring some this weekend, I would have. But
I would have been there, except I'm the super spreader this week, so I'm
no fun.
sequestered yet. Eric, you've just like grown leaps and bounds. I'm so happy for you. And you put it into you got away with putting it into Mickey Mouse terms for us. And I thank you.
Well, you're smarter than me because all that went over my head. I'll have to dissect it
The
later.
aquaculture that you're involved in, is that the kind where you have fish?
Yes. So when we
Okay.
first started the farm, the urban farm site, we built an aquaponic system, which we raised tilapia. We cycle the water from the tilapia pool, basically. about 2,000 fish. We'd cycle that through raised plant beds that had kind of river rock in it and watercress and nasturtiums. The plant served as the biological filter for the fish, took up all those nutrients, filtered that out. We harvest, cut, and sold the nasturtium blossoms, leaves, and watercress, and that cascaded back into the pool, causing aeration. So you had a closed loop symbiotic system, harvest and sell fish and the greens. So it's a great, didactic teaching tool, very dynamic. We never scaled it. I kind of ran the economics. We could make more money on growing microgreens, and then also having an aquaponic system with fish water next to microgreens was kind of good safety, kind of like, hey, this is probably not a good idea. So we let that go a number of years ago. But it was a really cool system, and I wish my kids were around to see it because it was a really neat system. And we haven't.
But that's
had
not growing in the industry, right?
It is. It is. Some very large scale greenhouse facilities are running aquaponic systems, mainly lettuce operations. I think it's a phenomenal system. It's a very difficult system to balance because if you think of it, it's not a linear thing where your fish are growing, and as they're growing, they're excrementing more nitrates. So your fertility is different through that duration, but you're also trying to pair that with a leafy green growing in that cycle as well. And then you've got enterprise in which you're selling fish, and you're selling probably your fish water waste as well as a waste stream. And then you're also selling those leafy greens. So you've got a very difficult business.
Not a one-stop shopper there.
I couldn't even manage an aquarium when I was.
Yeah, I get goldfish, and that was a disgusting disaster of like ugly 20-gallon tank. Anyway, so that's a really neat system. We don't obviously know anymore. We didn't scale it, so I can't speak to it in the industry, but it is definitely something that's burgeoning. But it's a difficult thing to do,
Right.
And I think it's a really sustainable thing to do in a neat system. And then hydroponic is a very productive one, a very effective one as well. Especially in greenhouse. So it's just to each their own.
Right.
I do things my way, and
Frank Sinatra, are you?
multiple eyes. Yeah. My eyes are green, but yeah.
Okay, that's good.
Or Elvis.
Yeah.
Well, Eric, this has been fun and fascinating.
Thank you.
There's more we could talk about, I'm sure, but we'll have to save it for another time.
Teresa, you have to go by his booth and get some of those microgreens. I promise you'll be so happy. Oh my gosh.
If he will allow me, I will definitely do that.
And the day tomorrow, I'll send you as many as you want.
Cynthia's given permission to give away Eric's.
Oh my gosh, it's such good stuff.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Yeah.
All right, so Eric, I probably didn't warn you about this, but all our guests on the Produce Buzzers podcast have to go through a painful ritual.
Oh, lovely. I did not know this.
I'm sorry, but you have to do it.
Okay.
You require it. Here's the deal. Teresa loves puns. And she brings a pun to every episode that relates to what we've been talking about.
Okay.
You have to sit through it and listen to it.
Okay.
And then, when you hear it,
I have to
you're
laugh.
going to groan. No, you
okay.
cannot laugh because
okay.
they're always
Can I
bad.
laugh?
I always laugh. I can't help it.
Okay. Let me hear it.
This segment we call Home.
Oh.
So, Teresa will give a pun. It's usually in the form of a question. And then we try to guess what the punny answer would be. So you got to think it through. We'll give you a little time after she says it. So, Teresa, what's our homegrown of the day?
This may be one of the worst ones.
Oh.
So a farmer was very, very progressive, like Eric.
Eric.
Yeah. And
Must be Eric we're talking about.
he wanted to go right down to the very nitty gritty with his crops. So he decided to have a psychologist analyze his broccoli and his microgreen broccoli. So, what do you think he found the major difference was?
Okay. Let's give it a little thought here.
Psychological profile.
Psychological profile. What is the main difference on the psychological profile of regular broccoli and microgreen broccoli.
Oh,
Cynthia,
It
got
in-
any ideas?
I do.
Oh.
I do.
Oh.
An inferiority complex.
Ah.
Oh, well done.
That. I
Only
like
complex?
that.
I don't know.
like
I was
it.
gonna say, is he a half-wit?
Yeah.
A what, a half-wit?
Is he a half-wit?
No,
Yeah.
half-wit, Rick?
Well, you're not gonna believe it, but I had the same thought that the microgreens are short and they felt inferior. Yeah, that's the thing about, I couldn't believe it when they said it.
How'd I do? How'd I do?
Well, that was a good answer,
Okay.
I think. You stuck with the psychological theme. I have no idea. I don't know the answer either.
Yeah, so it
I
is.
got nothing. So, Teresa, what was the main difference in the psychological profile of broccoli fully grown and a microgreen?
Well, he found out that the fully grown broccoli, when given the proper stimuli, was green with envy, but the microgreens were only just a little bit jealous.
Oh, that was the worst. That sounds so made up. You're just like making this up.
Not quite a pun, but it was.
They do have
That's like Confucius says.
Yeah.
inferiority. Yeah, kind of relates.
That was close. Yeah, actually, you hit it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should have
Very
stuck with him and gone like exactly right. You knew it.
Love it. Love it.
Okay.
You ever reserve the right to change your answer when somebody has a better answer than the one?
Yeah, exactly. The right to remain silent on the real answer if it's crummy.
I get broccoli.
You win broccoli. You win microgreens. We're going to give you some
All right.
microgreens.
All the microgreens you can grow.
We know the green giant thing. Wasn't there like a baby green giant? One time?
Sprout. His name was Sprout.
Yeah,
And so what was I don't remember why they had the sprout. Do you?
because they had some baby vegetables.
Is that what it was?
Oh, I thought it was like the baby peas or like, I don't know. Like it was like the peas.
Right.
All you people are older than me. I don't remember these old things.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with. I remember Green Giant, but yeah,
Yeah, they had the little sprout character.
Well, thank you so much, Eric. What a delight.
pleasure.
Congratulations on what you've done and what you've built there, and good luck for the future. I think you've got a bright one.
Much appreciated.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you, listeners, for tuning in to the Produce Buzzers podcast, brought to you by Produce Buzz, the gathering place for lovers of fresh fruits and veggies. We hope you were entertained a bit and educated a lot about fresh produce. Be sure to join us next time, and please tell your friends to do so as well. Like, share, and comment on our Produce Buzz Facebook page, and check out our website at www.producebuzz.com. There you will find articles about fresh fruits and veggies, how to select, store, and prepare them, as well as lots of interesting facts about all the wonderful bounty the earth provides for us. Until next time, be fruitful and don't forget to veg out.